Deep-sea adventures and rescues might sound thrilling and romantic, but the reality of being trapped in a dark submarine at the bottom of the ocean is the stuff of nightmares. And in 1939, 33 survivors aboard the submarine USS Squalus were living that nightmare. The early days of the U.S. submarine fleet were particularly perilous because not only could accidents happen, but if your submarine ended up on the bottom of the ocean, we had no way to rescue the submariners from slow death from lack of oxygen and near freezing temperatures at the bottom of the ocean. After witnessing the death of submariners in accidents aboard the S-51 in 1925 and the S-4 in 1927, U.S. Naval officer Charles Momsen decided that he would devise a way to save submariners from that ghastly fate. And all his technology and ideas would be put to the test in May of 1939 when a valve accident aboard the USS Squalus left 33 survivors trapped at the bottom of the ocean. It is history that deserves to be remembered. The keel of USS Squalus, which is Latin for shark, was laid down at Portsmouth Navy Yard in 1937, and the boat was commissioned in March 1939. This Sargo-class submarine had a top speed of 20 knots when surfaced and 7.75 knots submerged. Sargo-class subs were outfitted with 8 torpedo tubes, 4 forward and 4 aft, along with a 3-inch deck gun. This class also carried a newly designed battery that contained 2 concentric rubber cases with a layer of softer rubber between, which was made to resist damage from depth charges. Squalus was the second for class to be built, commanded by Lieutenant Oliver Naquin, a 1925 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. On the morning of May 23, 1939, after having already successfully completed 18 test dives, Squalus was executing a practice crash dive along the coast between New Hampshire and Maine, with 56 crewmen and 3 civilian contractors on board. 66 feet into the dive, a catastrophic failure of the main induction valve caused water to rush into the back half of the submarine. Naquin ordered the sub to surface, but the severe flooding pulled her down by the stern. As the engine room began filling with seawater, one brave sailor crawled between the arcing 6-foot-tall batteries, shutting them off before they could explode, but also plunging the crew into darkness. Naquin ordered a large steel door between the engine room and the operating compartment to be closed off, saving 33 of the original 59 crewmen on board. The boat sank silently before settling on the seabed, approximately 243 feet below the surface, in nearly freezing water. The 33 survivors were crammed into the forward torpedo room and the control room, in the dark, at the bottom of the ocean. But according to reports, they were in high spirits and treated as if it were a routine exercise. Captain Naquin kept a positive attitude and deployed a telephone buoy, which had a simple message written on it. It said, "Submarine sunk here. Telephone inside." Thankfully, when command did not receive the expected surface report from Squalus, the communication officer was notified and attempts were made to contact the missing sub. When these attempts failed, her sister ship, USS Sculpin, was sent with directions to make every attempt to locate her and stay in the area until successful. Through the diligence of Sculpin's crew, a red smoke bomb was quickly sighted and communication made through the telephone buoy. As the situation was unfolding, it came to the attention of Lieutenant Commander Charles Momsen, a 1919 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and former skipper of the U.S. submarine S-1, who was at the time leading the experimental diving unit at the Washington Navy Yard. An avid diver and inventor of the deep-sea rescue device commonly called the Momsen lung, he and his diving crew were immediately flown from Washington, D.C. Momsen reported that by midnight, 5 officers and 20 enlisted men had arrived at the scene of the accident. Aboard the sunken submarine, his Momsen lung had already been distributed to all men by Captain Naquin. The device had been adopted by the Navy in 1929, and Momsen had received the Distinguished Service Cross for inventing it. Consisting of a rubber bag that had a canister of soda lime to reuse and recycle exhaled air, the device had only been invented because Momsen's original idea, sort of diving bell rescue chamber that could be fitted over the submarine's escape hatch, had been rejected by the chain of command in 1926 as being impractical. But the loss of 40 men aboard the submarine S-4 in 1927 forced the Navy's hand in finding a better means of rescuing sunken submariners. Momsen was able to create a prototype of his rescue bell chamber, but before he could complete improvements, he was called to the Bureau of Construction and Repair to train on the proper use of his newly adopted submarine escape lung. At that point, Lieutenant Commander Alan Rockwell McCann, a 1917 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy who had commanded several early U.S. submarines, took over the redesign of the bell chamber. When it was completed, it was released as the McCann Submarine Rescue Chamber. The chamber weighed in at 10 tons, was 10 feet tall and 7 foot 9 inches in diameter. It could carry 7 passengers with 2 operators, operate in water up to 850 feet deep, and was used all the way into the early 1990s. McCann was also involved in the rescue operation of the Squalus crew. He was aboard the submarine rescue ship USS Falcon, which arrived overnight on May 24th, carrying the new rescue chamber, which had only ever been used for training purposes. So with Mommsen overseeing the divers and McCann overseeing the use of the chamber, the rescue of the Squalus's crew commenced. In the morning, the very first diver, Martin C. Sibitsky, a second-class bosun's mate on the Falcon, who was over 6 feet tall and, according to Mommsen, about 200 pounds of the Navy's best brawn, utilized a dragline that had been used in attempts to locate the Squalus. The dragline amazingly brought him within 6 feet of the forward torpedo room hatch. He was also able to untangle a buoy line and attach the downhaul wire for the rescue chamber. In the rescue report, this diver was credited with marked expedition of the entire rescue operation. The rescue chamber was lowered into the water and began its first trip down at 11:30 a.m., about 26 hours after the sinking. At 12:47, they successfully opened the hatches and were greeted with no cheers, but a few wisecracks. Why the delay, and where the hell are the napkins, as they distributed warm soup, sandwiches, and other provisions to the waiting men. The air in the submarine was ventilated for several minutes as the first survivors climbed into the rescue chamber. This successful trip justified the vision, faith, and hard work of those involved in the development of the equipment, according to the commander of the rescue operations. According to Mommsen, it was a routine drill for us, but in the eyes of the outside world, a miracle. We tried to appear calm, and maybe others were, but to me, this was the most exciting moment of my life. 11 years of preparation, combating skepticism and constructing imaginary disasters, all telescoped into one moment. Who could remain calm? 25 men were successfully brought up this way in 3 trips, but during the 4th ascent, with the remaining survivors, including Captain Naquin aboard, the motor stalled, not quite halfway up, and attempts to continue the ascent using the brake proved too dangerous, with a strain on the retrieval wire. The chamber had to be lowered back down to the submarine. A diver was deployed to cut the downhaul line so the chamber could be pulled up using the retrieval wire winch. But then that wire frayed, with just one strand of the wire still attached, so we were forced again to lower the chamber to the bottom. 2 divers then attempted to attach a new retrieval wire to the chamber on 2 separate trips, but the darkness of night prevented their success. Instead, the chamber operators blew the ballast a little bit at a time to try to achieve neutral buoyancy, and the men on the deck of the Falcon began to pull the retrieval wire hand over hand. Shortly after midnight, after 4.5 hours in the rescue chamber and 40 hours after the sinking, all men were safely hauled aboard the Falcon. The next day, a final descent in the chamber proved that there were no remaining survivors. 26 men had perished. For their heroism at the risk of their own lives, 4 Navy divers, Chief Machinist Mate William Batters, Chief Bosun's Mate Orson L. Crandall, Chief Metalsmith James Harper McDonald, and Torpedoman First Class John Milowski were awarded the Medal of Honor. The Navy began salvage operations under the direction of Mommsen, but the stern was sunk firmly into clay. It took 50 days to burrow under the wreckage and attach cables. On July 13th, when attempting to lift the submarine, the bow rose uncontrollably and shot out of the water for a few moments before she sank back to the bottom, breaking lines, pontoons, and according to Mommsen, also a few hearts. After a total of 113 days, the wreck was successfully lifted. She was towed into the Portsmouth Navy Yard, decommissioned, repaired, and overhauled. The boat was renamed USS Sailfish for the way she flew out of the water during salvage, and recommissioned on May 15th, 1940. In a twist of irony, Sailfish later sank a Japanese aircraft carrier that was carrying prisoners from USS Sculpin, the sister ship who had been the first to find her on that fateful day. USS Sailfish saw distinguished service in the Pacific during the Second World War, went on 12 war patrols, earned 9 battle stars, and a Presidential Unit Citation. In 1945, when the boat was decommissioned, there was an effort to have it preserved as a museum. The effort was unsuccessful, but the boat's sail was removed and preserved and is today on display at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Maine. Charles Bowers Swede Mommsen continued to experiment to solve problems in the Navy. As the commander of Submarine Squadron No. 2, he played a critical role in identifying and rectifying problems with the contact exploders on U.S. Mark 14 torpedoes, and later helped develop tactics for submarine wolf packs. He served in various commands throughout the war, including captain of the battleship USS South Dakota. Over the course of his long and exceptional service, he received the Navy Cross, the Distinguished Service Medal for both the Army and the Navy, the Legion of Merit with 2 gold stars in Combat V, and the Commendation Ribbon with Combat V, among others. He retired a Vice Admiral in 1955, Passed away from cancer in May of 1967, at the age of 70. In 2004, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, the USS Mompson, was named in his honor. The successful rescue of the Squalus survivors is a testament to the determination of fellow submariners as well as Navy divers. Monson and McCann's dedication to develop the equipment necessary to help preserve the lives of the men who risked their lives in the silent service facilitated an extraordinary rescue that deserves to be remembered.